Okay, so now we're going to continue kind of talking about conditionals. If we end up having a situation where, like what we talked about, if we could ask a question where we start with the word if it is raining, then wear a raincoat. But what if you want them to do, we want to actually branch our code where we can go one of two ways. Instead of just not doing it, we can say, if it is raining, then wear a raincoat. Otherwise, so let's write that as otherwise, we want them to do something else. So that's kind of implying if it is not raining. So otherwise, how about otherwise bring an umbrella, just in case. Okay, so if it is raining, wear a raincoat. Otherwise, bring an umbrella. Okay, we have two different options, two ways that our code can branch, okay, based on if this is true or false. But then how can you make it so that you can choose to do one or the other, where we're executing code? Before, we've seen that as long as this is a true statement, we do what's inside of the code block. If we have anything that's outside of that, not tied to this if statement, that it just gets executed regardless. So if I say I'm checking these numbers and I want to report back which one is the larger number, let's say I am doing if number A is greater than number B, then what could we report out? We can report out something. Then number A is the larger number. Okay, so this is giving us information. We say, hey, I want it to report this. If number A is greater than number B, then number A is the larger number. Okay, but we want the other side of that. If it is not, if number A is not greater than number B, then we want to print out something else. That is where an if-else statement happens. So let's go ahead and write that piece. We can start that code with an else and then its own set of code blocks. Okay, and what that means is that if it is false, then execute this code. So it doesn't even need to check. If it's true, if the conditional is true, then we execute the code inside this first code block. So let's go ahead and refine this. If conditional is true, we execute all code in between this code block. Okay, if it is false, so that's the conditional again, that's still that initial question. If conditional is false, then execute all the code between this code block. Okay, so if we want to do that, the same thing in here using that same format, then we are going to write an else with its own set of code blocks. Okay, and that this is what we want to execute if number A is not larger than number B. So we could say system.out.println number B is the larger number instead. Okay. All right, so we have our input, and now granted, our input does not need to be something that we're hard coding in there. It could be where we're using the scanner and we're asking those questions and doing the math on it. So let's go ahead and see what this kind of does. Oops, I am short. Let's fix that. Rerun it. Okay, so we want to see what's running. 10 is the larger number instead. This number A greater than number B, that resolves to a false Boolean answer. So that means that the else code is what gets executed. Okay, if I change 5 to 15, rerun this, then let's see what the code executes. 15 is the larger number, so that is executing this code block and not this code block. Notice that if this is true, this code does not get run, okay? And conversely, if our conditional is false, the else code gets run, and this code for if it was true does not get run. It does also, it should be mentioned that we do not need to only have one line of code. We can have as much code in there as we possibly want. As long as it is inside a code block, then we can branch our code and choose what to do. So I could have this, if it's true, print only once. If it's false, I want it to print the same thing 3 times. Let's go ahead and run that again. So I'm asking the question, if 15 is larger than 10, execute this line of code. Execute this command. Okay, let's go ahead and change that back to 5. As long as it evaluates to true or false, now we executed that code 3 times. Okay, let's look at another way that we can do this. So we have our if statement, we have our else statement. Okay, now you're probably questioning yourself, well, hey, what if the input that they put in was actually the same? What if number A and number B was the same? Because then this would be false, and this should not really be run because this would be incorrect. So let's go ahead and kind of rewrite this as another way that we can do our conditional. If we have actually more than 2 ways, it's not positive or negative, but maybe it could be a range of things. Okay, if we want more than one conditional, then we can check. So that would be like if it is raining, then wear a raincoat. Otherwise, we could say, how about otherwise, if it is sunny, then wear a t-shirt. And then we could do like a finally, which basically I'm asking if it is not raining and it's also not sunny, because if we got to this last statement, then both of these would have had to be false. Not sunny, then wear a snowsuit. Okay, so something like that. How would we write that? Well, we have our if statement, which is our first one. If we want to do another set of conditionals, okay, then that means that we are going to run, and I'm going to keep it commented out, else if, okay? And then we have smooth set of parentheses for a different conditional, okay, with its own set of code blocks that is going to run if the code, if this is false and this is true, okay? So if previous conditionals are all false and this is true, then the code in between this code block will execute. Okay, so let's go ahead and build that then using this same thing, if, else if, and then we have basically our finally our else. Okay, if, else if, with its own set of conditionals, so I can switch this around. Number A is less than number B. Then what do we want to do? Well, it has its own code block. We can print it out. So that would actually be this statement in this case. So if number A is greater than number B, then number A is larger. If number A is less than number B, then number B is larger. If both of those are false, that's when we would get to here, okay? Which would be system.out.println that the values are equal, okay? So this else statement, this final else statement is only going to run if this first conditional is false and the second conditional is false. So here we got 10 is the larger number instead. That's because this one, it was false. It evaluates this one, just like what we said, if previous conditionals are all false and this else if statement is true. Okay, so it's executing this code block and it's reading this one. Okay, sometimes, and this is what I like to do, I like to actually spread out my conditionals to see them easier. Okay, so I always have my closing bracket. I don't put it here. I always have it on the same line of where the if statements and the else if and the else statements are. That way I can make sure that I have all my code blocks and I can easily see what we're doing. We're kind of building a little bit of a ladder. Okay. Now, I could write this different, and I have to be careful because I could do multiple statements. But I could say, is number A equal to 10? Well, that answer would be false. So the number is not equal to 10. Okay, well, then I could also ask, is it equal to greater than 10? Number A greater than or equal to 10. Okay, and there's a reason why I'm doing this. Okay, the number is equal or larger than 10. Okay, the number is smaller than 10. Okay, so we have three values. We have this if statement, we have an else if statement or conditional, and we have finally our else statement. Now, if we run this, we would like to think that both of these would execute, but remember I said that previous conditionals all have to be false for the one below to be able to execute. So what do we get? We got the number is smaller than 10 because this was false, and then this executes. But now let's say I make number A 10 and I run it where they're both the same. So let's go ahead and watch. We would like to think that this is the only one that would execute and this one because they're both true, because if number A equals 10, then this conditional is actually true and this conditional. But because this is an else if statement, because I'm saying else, then if this is true, it will not evaluate anything else. Okay, as soon as we have a true statement, it is done evaluating. It's not even going to check the rest of them. Okay, if I wanted to check this, and I also wanted to check this, okay, then I actually have to remove that else statement, like this. So I have my if, I have another if, okay? This actually changes how this does the conditionals, though, because this else statement is not pertaining to this. Okay, so it's asking the question and executing this code block. That's this line. It's asking the question, executing this code block. That's this line. Okay, if I make number A, let's say, okay, if I run this and I make 10, so we know that this one, this second if statement will run. The way that I have these if statements run, both of them will get checked because it's not an else if, it's an else, or it's just an if. But this one should be false. I want you guys to see, because this else statement is not linked to both of them. It's only if you use if, else, or if, else if, else if, else if, else if, else. Okay? So this says the number is equal or larger than 10. That's this, because that is true. Okay? This did evaluate and evaluated to false. Okay? So it didn't execute, but it didn't run this code. Okay? The only way that you get an else statement to run, because it's only tied to the if statement directly above. Okay, so if I deleted this, there's no issues. If I deleted this one, there's no issues. But if I have both of these if statements, this is incorrect. So actually you want to have it, if you want it to check, and if if both of these are false to execute this code, then you need to build in else ifs. And we can do as many else ifs as we want, different conditional, okay? And we have its own set of code blocks to execute, okay? We can keep doing this. We can build a lot of things, okay? So this is how we can start branching our code. In the next video, I'm going to quickly show you guys how to use that with methods so that you can execute an entire piece of logic just using conditional statements based off of what you wanted to do. All right, good luck. Have fun.